Hello and welcome to the DJ Force 10 In Conversation podcast, episode 150, and my very special guest on today's show is Ollie Baxxter. He is the frontman from the band Broadside. They're about to release their brand new album, Into the Raging Sea. It is out on July the 24th via Sharptone Records, and please go check it out. You can listen to the title track right now, along with another one called Foolish Believer. Both fantastic tracks. But their album, I've actually been privy to a copy, and it is fantastic. It's kind of like, I was a bit hesitant at the start because it was kind of described as pop punk, but it's not. It's not. We sort of talk about it in the interview, but it's kind of like a post-pop punk, kind of pop rock, if you will, sort of sound going on in it. But it's absolutely fantastic. The lyrics, the music, everything. Love it. And it was an absolute pleasure to speak to Ollie as well. I just want to give a big shout out to everyone that's been listening to the show. Again, I know I do this pretty much every episode, but I think it's important to say thank you to new listeners, especially ones that were here for one episode and they've kind of got the second one and they're here. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the guests from last week. I want to thank BPMD, Mark and Bobby. That was an absolutely fantastically fun conversation I had with you guys. We also had Primal Fear with Ralph. That was great. I love that, and I'm a new fan. I've been listening to that album still. Fantastic. And Mushroom Head, Skinny from the band, and that was brilliant because I've been a fan of theirs for a long time, and that was a great chat. And then on Friday we had Rob Swift and his partner Dilly. That was probably one of my favourite podcasts I've done. It's definitely up there, and I just want to give a shout out to everyone last week for joining me on this show, and all the people that listen. Thank you. Absolutely loving it. This week we've got plenty coming up as well. Got one for every day. After that, it's a bit sketchy. I say sketchy. It's a bit thin on the ground. But by the end of this week, I would have done or would have broadcast 50 podcasts during this lockdown, which is totally blew my mind when I counted it. But it started way back in March with the first one of the sort of lockdown time with Don Jameson, comedian from the States, and it's going to end. Well, it's not going to end. It's going to come up. I've got where are we now? We're 150, so I've got 154, 155. Yeah, I've got the next sort of 5-6 episodes recorded, so we're definitely going to hit that mark. And I just want to give a shout out now to everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to reiterate this during the week because we're sort of getting back to having to go back into the workplace and all that kind of stuff. Commerce needs to reopen and I need to go back to work. And the schools are kind of opening and stuff like that. Not going to lie, I am incredibly anxious about it because I don't know what's right, what's wrong. I don't know what to expect. I know the company that I work for have got some good measures in place to protect the staff members. So, we'll see. I mean, I'll comment on it. I can't really say where I work, who I work for, but I'll try and bring that into it, just in case anyone's struggling or anyone's having the same fears or anxiety that I am. Packed with a potential, well, say it's not a potential medical issue, it is a medical issue that I have, and it's just kind of, when you've got to support a family and you've got to be away from them to go work and stuff like that, it really does, it's playing on my mind. I'm not going to sugarcoat it on anything like that, but as we sort of encounter this new era that we are going into, please share with me any kind of thoughts or anything like that you guys have on it. Because I really want to know, I really want to connect, because mental health is a big thing for me. It seems to be the main highlight of the next sort of 2 podcasts as well. We do sort of touch on mental health. We do talk about it and sort of general sort of like anxiety and all that kind of stuff, coping mechanisms and whatnot that we kind of thought we had and didn't, and I thought I had and it really wasn't, as I sort of found out over time. But yeah, please reach out if you guys are having a moment. Maybe we could enjoy a virtual coffee together, or something like that. If you want to, talk about it or whatever, because I've got this facility set up here. We're not going to podcast it unless you want to. But I just want to give everyone a big thanks for helping me get through it, and hope I played my part in getting some of you guys through it. But like I said, this isn't the final one. This is just another one this week, really. And then after that, we'll go back to kind of a more spaced out kind of like release schedule, I think, on that front, as and when I can get interviews in, because obviously as things are opening up again, a lot of these musicians are sort of going to get out of the house a bit more. They're probably not going to want to be stuck in the house all day doing interviews and things like that, but obviously some of them will have albums out and things like that. But later on this week, I'm going to go through I'm going to recap a couple of the episodes and show my thanks and gratitude to everyone on that front. I don't want to cheapen this or anything, but if you do want to join me for a virtual coffee or anything, I have signed up for a website where you can buy me a coffee. It's called Ko-fi. It's ko-fi.com/DJ Force X. That's FORCEX. You don't have to. I just signed up for it because I heard it on another website, and it seemed like a bit of fun, really. But you can throw a couple of quid and buy me a coffee, which is great, because I love coffee. It is my morning drink of choice. I take it black, and that's kind of like it, or a good flat white, or an espresso if I'm feeling like I need an instant kick. But like I said, I don't want to cheapen it. You don't have to do that. It's just a bit of a laugh. But I just want to say thanks, everyone. This has been awesome. And coming up right now, I've totally skipped off this back. I've got Ollie Baxxter. He is the frontman from Broadside. They've got a new album out. Please go listen to it. Let me know what you think. But in the meantime, we have this interview. So enjoy. So I'd like to welcome to my show, I have Ollie Baxxter. He is the front man from US band Broadside. Welcome, Ollie.
What's going on, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Very well. Very well.
Excellent. Cool. So, like I said, we're here to sort of, we are definitely here to speak about your band's new album that's coming out.
Perfect.
Called Into the Raging Sea. You've just released the title single, I should say, from the album as well. That's what kind of... that's how I discovered you guys. I'm going to be flat out honest with you.
Oh, that's awesome.
I hadn't heard you guys before. I feel like I should have, but I haven't. So I was quite interested to actually get to speak to you because I really enjoyed the single. And then obviously I got Foolish Believer as well. Okay. Which is the other single you guys sent out.
Yeah.
But I've actually been quite fortunate to listen to a copy of the album as well.
Oh, awesome! Very cool.
And
do you hate it?
No,
is it trash?
No, I like it. I like it. in like, I wouldn't be speaking to you otherwise. Let's put it that way.
That's valid.
So, because I only generally speak to bands or music that I really dig, and I've got quite a wide kind of like taste in music. So there's obviously quite a few bands I listen to and like. So, but no, I really like you guys. I mean, it's a bit different from what I normally listen to. It's kind of got that sort of like pop punky vibe to it.
Of course,
but it's not straight up pop punk for any sort of like, if that makes sense. I was trying to sort of describe your sound.
We tried to kind of evolve it past. Initially with the inertia of the band, we were kind of in this like pop punk wave.
Yeah, and
then with our second album, it was kind of like it just felt organic, so we just kind of put out the album. But truth be told, I mean, I'm not ashamed of any of our songs, but there are bits of me that are obviously more aggressive. You can hear it in the tone of my voice. Mm-hmm. And obviously if you reference the first record, there's some of that, that a caged beast. So with this third album, we just kind of wanted to go put it all out there. So we're trying to be more of like a more pop rock band now, like a general pop rock as opposed to like a niche little genre. I know every band says that, but that's really where we are.
No, that's real. I mean, that's why I kind of like, because it kind of had that more aggressive sound to it than like when I saw like genre thing come up on the sort of send out, it said pop punk. So I instantly had in my mindset 3 chords, pop punk, skate punk kind of sound, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. It had like you sort of were going for, had that more rock vibe to it. So it's kind of, I guess, post pop punk. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe. Yeah, somewhere.
But no, that's why it really resonated, because it kind of had that element to it, but it showed that you had other strings in your bow, if you will. So it kind of no, it's really cool. I really enjoyed the album. In fact, I was listening to it not half an hour ago. So
I really appreciate that, man. Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's really cool. So what can you like? Because obviously, like you said, you guys you've released a couple of albums already, and we've kind of already touched on a few of the sort of changes that you might have made to it. But what can the fans really, like long-term fans, really expect from this album?
I feel like with this album, the way that we wrote it, it was, genuinely the most organic way that we in modern society could write an album. The first 2 we recorded out in LA, where I lived at the time. And it was like, all right, let's just try to work with huge producers and this and that, and which is awesome. If 1, you can afford it, and 2, if it can make sense long term. But with this album, we've gone through so many changes, a couple of band members change, and just me growing, I'm in my 30s now. So it's like, oh shit, I want to be understanding of where I am in my life and everything about that. So it was written in an organic sense of, I'd never written a record with the current band members. We went out to the middle of nowhere, wrote an album. We wrote half of it over in my apartment during the winter, like literally stuck inside my house. And it was one of those situations where it's like, that's kind of how people imagine that a record is written, but oftentimes it's not. It's more like everybody's opinions in it. Then you get producers, then you get the manager. But this was just like hey, I'm not sure the fate of the band after this, or if what it even means to be in a band that's like not, heavily marketable, et cetera, et cetera. So we were like, let's just put everything we can into writing good songs. So the practicality of the album is, the structure, it feels familiar. It's easy to digest. It's verse, chorus, huge bridge, sometimes just bridge, outro. So it's a simple formula, but I wanted to approach it like anybody on the surface level can listen to it and be like, cool, I either like this band, or am I allowed to have a foul mouth on this? Or
yes, you are. Yes. Okay,
cool. Or they don't fuck with my band at all, right? So they're going to be like, nah, I don't like that sound, it's trash. Or they're going to be like, yeah, it's good. But if you're an artsy weirdo like myself, you could dive in there and dive into the nitty gritty within the confines of the lyrics, I would say, because I do like to write about real shit and promote perseverance. That's kind of my whole thing. I love the overcoming of being confined by being a human being at times. So that's kind of like my whole struggle. But for the sake of the band, we just wanted to write a digestible album, and I think that we kind of accomplished that with some fun little moments along the way. So
that's really cool. So I mean, with this one, did you work with any particular producers, or was it all kind of, like, say, you wrote it in your apartment, but the recording process of it, did you have a producer?
Of course,
already?
Yeah, so we went with Seth Henderson. He's done a few of our friends' bands' albums, like this band called Real Friends, Knuckle Puck. Like, he's got this kind of, energy. And why we went with him is because we'd been talking for a year previous to that. A lot of people were biting at buying our third record, but Seth was just super kind, and he's a dad, and I guess I have daddy issues, and I was attracted to that. But I was just like, something about him being just like, hey man, I'm a big fan of your band and I would love to work with you, and genuinely mean that, especially in a time where, I mean, people will fucking, chew off your tongue so you'll never speak again, and then tell you that they're your favorite. So it's just the way it is, and I can accept that. But what's nice about Seth is that it felt like he was like, hey, this is awesome, let's record it. And so I'd say about 80% of what you're hearing on the record is 80% of our ideas, whereas in some scenarios, bands go in there and the producer or whoever comes along, or someone really cool comes along and they're like, hey, you should change this. And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And then that person's like, I want 50%. But this is pretty, it's all organic. And even the stuff that we created with Seth, it was like, it just felt really good to be like with somebody that felt like they wanted to create something as opposed to wanting to exploit or just doing my job,
Yeah, getting the points, if you will. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm always interested to hear like various bands' experiences with various producers, and that's quite cool.
Yeah.
That you kind of had that kind of almost organic kind of working relationship with them, where, you know, obviously it was your overriding kind of artistic vision of your music. Like you said, 80% of the record is you would say you guys, but you were sort of willing to sort of like obviously have his input as well, which is
of course, yeah, because he understands like moments in songs, so that was really cool. My favorite thing working with him is that you could tell that he's kind of like a tame guy, you know, like just a nice guy, you know, a man's man, if you will. But then you get my crazy ass in there, and there were so many times when our dynamic, I could just feel the rest of my band being like, Ollie, dude, he does not get your like intensity, and I'm just like, yeah, man, let's turn this shit up on level 13 and get this shit crazy, like, you know. And then I would do stuff with my vocals, and he would be like, that was and I was expecting him to say things like, I don't understand it, but he was instead like, yo, that was insane. I've never heard anything like that. Let's do it again. So he trusted a lot of the weird shit that I wanted to put in, which is honestly like from 8-year-old version of me to now, it's like there's this kid that's like performing in my living room. I'm like, hey, mom, love me. Aren't I funny? And it kind of felt like that in the studio as well. Like, look at this cool thing I can do. And they were like, fuck it, go ahead, let's entertain it.
That's really, I mean, that's really good. A producer that works with moments, that's a rarity.
Exactly.
It's one of those things. I mean, you found someone good that can actually like harvest that kind of like you know, moment. I get there's no other word for it, but
exactly.
You know, there's only a few, like I say, only a few sort of producers that have kind of had those moments that I can recollect in my own head. Like, I think it was Butch Vig with Kurt Cobain, like when he was laying on the couch playing rather than being in the studio. He kind of like just mic'd him up there and then, and it was just that moment. And just like bits like that.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. Yeah.
And like if you've got that kind of like, if you've got someone that kind of like vision, I guess is the word, and patience at the same time, that's great. And I mean, you guys have made a really good record. I mean, I wouldn't like, you know, discount any of those tracks not being on some kind of like teen rom-com or something like that, or some teen like,
right, of course,
if you're like putting them on into like that sort of like the publishing side of things, they fit perfectly into that kind of like area of you know, film and whatnot. But also you've got the sort of more up tempo tracks that you know, just, I mean, it's a solid album. There's not much, I couldn't really sort of, you know, there was no filler, if you will. Like from,
I love that.
From what I was listening to.
That was important to me, was to not have, because in other songs or other albums, we'd be down to the deadline or out of budget. So we'd be like, shit, man, let's just bang out a song really quick. But with this, it's like we went in with like 17 songs and we narrowed them down, which is super awesome.
That's pretty cool.
And then, to relish back in the situation of moments, it was just, there were so many weird things I wanted to try, and he just let me do it. For instance, in the new single, it was in the Raging Seed. There's a part where I say, I'll cut my words in pieces if it's what'll help you sleep. And I recorded the line, I'm drowning and not happy. And then I wanted him to cut it up, splice it up to where it says, I'm happy and not drowning. So it's like just shit like that, you know? So it's like, he's like, why? You could just say the line. But I'm like, no, it'd be awesome if we can treat it like arts and crafts. And he was very kind in not being like, dude, shut the hell up. Like, let's just listen to me and let's just do it the basic way.
Yeah.
You know, or if I'm like, yeah, I want to sing this lyric from the room next door, so it sounds like I'm 2 doors away. And he could be like, I could just put an effect on it. But instead he was kind of like, he was like a dad, you know, just like, go ahead, kids, go play. Yeah.
Yeah. Using that kind of like that power of like imagination, if you will, that you lose going into adulthood, purely because
you do. You really do.
Practicality and whatnot. But I mean, obviously with like, you know, modern technology and stuff as well, like cutting up the lyrics, that isn't so much of a sort of a pain in the ass as it used to be. Like,
yeah, that's true too.
You know, I mean, I when I was younger, I was taught sound recording on reel to reel. So I was taught how taught how to splice and edit with a razor blade and a piece of tape, and just cutting it up and then taking out the bits you don't want, putting bits in and all that kind of crap. And it was just like, you know, now you can just literally, I can go onto my thing here and just mess with the words around and stuff like that. And,
exactly.
You know, and that's just fantastic. That's absolutely, you know, that's brilliant, because you can do that. You just go, look, can we just change it around? Because it's your artistic vision. Obviously, you're putting something out for people to listen to, but you're also putting out your art. So you want to put your touches on it, whether they're kind of noticed or not, or if it's, if it's just something, but it's something that you've put in there. It's like when an artist paints, something and they want to put these little touches in that you don't always realize are there unless you take
absolutely
look. And that's what it's exactly. That's what, I mean, this is what this feels like to me anyway. And I'm assuming it's kind of around the sort of same you're feeling with it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you gotta protect it. I mean, in a day where we do consume and drink down information so rapidly, and nobody's fault except for maybe you can point a few fingers, Steve Jobs, etc. Rest in peace. It's just kind of like, it's just the way it is. So, you really have to protect your art and your creativity in the sense of, it's not even about being like, I'm an artist anymore, as much as it is like, no, I took the time and I put this in there, and that the journey meant something to me.
Yeah.
So you do have to protect that,
Yeah, and that's what you remember at the end. Like when you come
exactly.
to being a musician at the end of the day, that's what you remember about that record. That you did this bit, you did this, and it's not, as much as, I mean, I'm being a musician myself, or a former musician, I should say. I haven't released anything in years, but I'd make something for me, but also, and for obviously people to kind of consume, if you will. But down at the end of the day, I had creative control over what I did, know, and it sounds like you have that as well, which is great.
Exactly. It is good. Yeah.
I don't know what your guys' background is generally. I know you got a couple of albums out, so I don't know how it differs from those processes for those ones. But would you like to sort of like, give a sort of rough idea of like what it was like compared to,
for sure,
previous albums, if you will?
When, so we were previously signed to Victory Records, and they recently got bought out, and we were let go as free agents. And by the grace of the universe, in the middle of recording, they were just kind of like the conglomerate that bought our old label was like, hey, we're just going to quit claim your record back to you. You can do what you want with it. And then, I'm sitting there 8.5 years into touring. I'm 31 years old, and I'm like, I've put, when you just put everything in one basket and you're sitting there, and I'm like, I've chased my dreams. I've lost relationships. I've lost friendships. I've lost so many opportunities. Skipped paying rent a couple of months, like all chasing this dream. And everything I always said was, this is my dream. I'm not going to fucking back out now. That's not something that I believe in. Not even in a douchey way, just in the sense of like, look, man, this is all I have. And again, I have to protect it. And there's got to be a reason why little celebrations keep happening. Like we played Warped Tour twice in a year. We did Slam Dunk. We did all this stuff. So I'm like, these opportunities keep coming because there must be there. We just haven't been quote unquote discovered yet or found out. And so this was another one of those opportunities where it was like, you can take this record and bury it in the ground, or you can pick it back up and try to remarket yourself and put out new music and just keep rolling. And granted, our first album only came out 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but it just feels like so fast in the way that things happen for, cool bands or, other bands, et cetera, et cetera. And it's such a fucking struggle for me because it's like, man, like I don't want to believe that if I didn't put my foot down, that I would be trampled over. I don't want to believe that if I just turned away, that 5 more feet would have been that opportunity. And it's such a fucking blinding dream to just be like, I accept the criticism. I accept what people think about me. I accept the way they want to tear my art apart or swallow it down. However, it's such an aggressive word, but you know what I mean? Yeah. To consume it. And it's such a vulnerability to, at the end of the day, just be like, yeah, hopefully this works out for me. Like I'm taking a step back and looking out at the big dream, the dream that everybody has with a beautiful family and kids and money,
Yeah.
all these things. And as of right now, it's like all I'm holding on to is a fucking dream that feels like sand slipping through my fingertips. So as much as I love creating and making music, and as much as I want to stand behind the sentence, it's all for me and just for me, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks or what success looks, but to everybody through individual eyes, success, it means something completely different. And I have a very clear goal and always have of what it means to me, and I'm not there yet, and it makes me sick and it keeps me up at night, and it has me so terrified to think that I spent all this time chasing the wrong light. That's a terrifying thing.
Yeah.
But it's all I have. So, I mean, I just keep letting it lead me forward. Whether that means lead me forward blindly or not, I won't know until I get there. But as it does feel good to at least be creating along the way.
Yeah,
you know?
I was going to say, I mean, that's the important thing. You are creating, even though, like, you know, you might feel that, you know, this dream that you are chasing is an impossible dream, or if it's sort of slipped, like you say, it's like sand through your fingers. It's one of those things. You'll know when the time is up on it. Like at the moment, you don't feel. I can tell from your words, you don't feel that way. You don't feel that time is not up. I mean, I know you say you're 31, but that's still quite young. You know, and that you've got plenty of time. And right now, I mean, it's one. I mean, I don't know what it's like to release an album in this sort of situation either. Because obviously, you know, with the world on hold, it's kind of
course,
everyone's kind of learning as they go. But
the big vacation, let's call it.
Oh yeah, that's one of the vacation 2020, and it's been good. You know, things are sort of easing up now. Apparently, but I can go back to work in like 3 weeks. Apparently, so I'm like, okay, if that's what's going to happen,
we'll see.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But it's just sort of like, I mean, how is that? I mean, obviously you've got quite a lot of passion behind what you do, but having this kind of like the pandemic over it, in as much as like preventing you guys from like physically going out and promoting this, how has that kind of been generally, or have you only just really kicked off this cycle?
No, so it's funny because we had a full Europe and run. Like it was starting at one end and going to the other. Like we were supposed to hit so many different markets that we'd never been to, like Italy and everything before. So that was obviously canceled, and now, or not canceled, but rescheduled.
Yes.
And then it was meant to be in August and September. And now that I've seen that Slam Dunk over there has been canceled in September, I can't help but wonder if this is going to be pushed again, which is fine, you know, safety over everything. But the whole idea was, okay, we're going to release a single on day one of us playing in Europe. Then on the way back, we're going to drop single 2, which would be obviously a couple days ago, whatever. And then come July, we'd have the album out and it'd be like, oh yeah, everything's perfect. And then it was like, okay, reschedule that. Now it was supposed to be, okay, we'll put the album out on the day of, you know, release, and then blah, blah. So it's interesting, man, because people are at home, right? So they're like, okay, I have time to listen to the song. And, hey, you know what? I might treat myself and listen to the song again. Yeah. So like the numbers have been like doing really well. I think we're at like 260,000 streams on a song that's 1 month old. So that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
In the world of streaming, whatever that means. So, you know, it boosts my ego a little bit, but at the same time, it's so strange to not be like, hey guys, you want to hear? It's weird that the next time I play a show, I'll probably have a whole album out of songs that we have never played live. And that is super strange to think.
Yeah.
But
it's a total, I mean, I've been quite fortunate that most of you guys are at home. So I've been interviewing bands from all over the world, and
it's so cool.
And it's just sort of like getting the different like perspective on it and everything is quite, I think, quite important from my standpoint anyway. I want to know, but it's just sort of, you know, I mean, some bands that I've spoken to ended up postponing their albums.
Yeah, I've heard of postponing them and all that sort of thing. And we were just like, you know what, we've waited long enough, and let's just get this thing out there and get it rolling, you know.
Yeah, I've been an advocate from the start. This is a perfect time to release something. I mean, yes, you can't tour, but social media is such a strong like tool these days. You can use that to, you know, pretty much most things. But it's just sort of like you said, there's people at home that are listening to music, like they're treating themselves to an extra listen, if you will.
Exactly. They're like, oh, I got to work out to this, or go on a walk, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing.
And that's what's great. But that's what's got, I mean, from my point of view as well, I've been getting so much music sent to me. And take you guys, for instance. I mean, I listen to your stuff and I like it. You know, and
that's awesome. Yeah.
It ends up on my playlist that I have on sort of daily around the house and all that kind of stuff when I'm doing stuff like homeschooling my kids and all that kind of stuff at the moment. And all this new music that like, I mean, I probably would have listened to, but I couldn't guarantee that I'd get the full experience.
That's a good point. Yeah,
you know,
like you wouldn't be truly tuned into it 100% because of just general life stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a radio show which this will go out on, and all that kind of stuff that I do get to preview or put out music, but I only get a few select tracks on that. The real problem I've had recently is selecting the tracks for that because there's so many good ones. But I also DJ rock clubs here, so when they're back open, I'll have an arsenal of like new music. So it's kind of like, whereas before I'd be kind of, well, there's always that time of night everyone's sort of drunk enough and they all want new metal and like general sort of like big
of course
covers and stuff.
Memories.
Exactly that regression hour. And
take me back.
Yeah. And we had baggy trousers and all that
stuff.
But yeah, it's and now we get to come out of this, and I'm sort of like, putting out songs to people saying, listen to this, listen to this, listen to this, like via the club pages.
That's so cool. Yeah,
just getting time to do that. So by the time we get back, I'll have, like I say, an arsenal of new songs, and hopefully like new danceable songs, like that people will dance to. So obviously in a sort of club situation, you want people to dance and not stare at you with their arms crossed. So the worst thing a DJ can have happen to them. But
oh, hey, dude, worst thing that could have any sort of audience staring at. That's like I have nightmares about it.
Yeah,
like we play in Texas, and there's just a bunch of yeehaw men out there that are like, "What band is this?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, just buy a T-shirt, please."
I need to eat.
Please. But yeah, that's funny.
No, I mean I lived over in the States for a bit as well, so I've had a sort of like taste of that culture. I lived over in Florida, so it wasn't quite Texas.
Okay.
I know what the gigs are like there, the smaller gigs and stuff, and I've walked into a couple of country bars and stuff, and I know what you mean.
What part of Florida were you in?
I was in Tampa.
Oh, okay. So what brought you there?
My wife basically got offered a transfer through the place she works.
Okay.
And we kind of just jumped at it. It sort of like came at a point where I wasn't really attached to any work. My kids weren't at school yet, so we were like, we'll either do it now or wait till they go to university. And we just did it. We were there for about 5 years. So
that's crazy, man. That's awesome.
And it was good. I mean, I started my sort of like radio show there out of like sheer boredom. Thankfully a radio station picked it up in the UK. And
dude, that's so awesome.
And just went from there really. I still work for the same company I started working for over there and everything. So, they transferred me over and it was all good. So it was all, all good, but I missed the weather.
I was going to say, it's funny because, every time I go over to Europe, the UK specifically, I'm always such a romantic loser over there. And I try to just be like, oh my God, this is so incredible. And then, you talk to the kids and they're like, it's shit. It's shit. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, I guess it's shit.
Well, because you kind of like, I had that kind of attitude for a little bit. And then when I went away and came back again, I really appreciate the stuff now. Because, like, obviously coming from over from the state, like especially like Tampa area, and you got Orlando down the road, everywhere is just so commercialized. So I
mean, absolutely, and that's right, exactly.
Yeah, and you just can't get away from glaring adverts for various things that, at the end of the day, are just consumable products. But consumable bits and bobs, McDonald's.
Exactly. You're just constantly being marketed to in whatever sense. So my whole idea is like, going to these cafes and then people don't give a shit about you. They won't look at you. They're nice enough to just kind of let you be. Yeah. They're doing their own thing. And that's like my dream come true. So over there, I was like, man, everybody's so nice and you sound intelligent, straight up.
We try to.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's all good. But I mean, hopefully once this passes over and you guys get your European dates back, I'll be coming to see you guys. So
that'd be nice, man. Yeah.
On that front, because I really like, this is one thing I've also kind of promised myself is to get out to more gigs and stuff after this thing's over. Not that I wasn't going to them before, but I've like, it's one of those things where when you can't do something, and it's one of the things that we had a bunch of tickets for various shows coming up and they've all been refunded. So, and it's just like, oh, well, that's our nights out gone.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but no. I mean, obviously everyone's suffering. That's a kind of a first world problem, but it's you know, it's just one of those things where I'm just like, I'm going to go to a lot more gigs after this. You know, I need to get out and, you know, and see some of these bands that I'm chatting to and everything, because I didn't get out enough before, so I'm going to get out a lot more now. Yeah,
man, just let me know. I'll be happy to throw you on the guest list.
Oh, cool.
We can talk shit.
Yeah, no,
we can talk shit about Tampa.
Yeah, we can, very much so. So, I mean, I've got a couple of questions left for you, man, and I can let you get on with the rest of your day if that's all right.
Yeah, no worries. Of course.
These are sort of like centered around yourself, rather than the band as a whole.
Okay.
What I want to know are your sort of best way of promoting 3 most influential albums. So the album that sort of like you heard and it made you want to pick up a microphone and sing. So like the first time you heard something, what 3 albums would you really kind of like pinpoint as those influential ones?
All right, they're a bit strange, but let's see. Specifically, I was really into the band Thursday when I found them out. Full
Cool.
Collapse. I'm a big fan of that album. I appreciate that it's not perfect. I really appreciate the imagery, and I just think like his delivery was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a huge, right, like one of the greatest albums ever. And then let's see, I'm a big Joy Division fan.
Oh.
So like I you know, of course romanticize Ian Curtis, but I love what Peter Hook did to the songs. I think they're so cool, and they were another one of those bands that did really dope, interesting things like, oh, we want to match this drum tone, so let's go on the roof and record the drums there, so they have that light and airy sound. I just think stuff like that is really cool. Of course, I love artists with an inner struggle, which is most artists, but I like the fact that there was no method to Ian Curtis. He was just kind of like write what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I think especially given history and where he's from and just understanding how things were at that time, I mean, it wasn't cool to be miserable. It was just that he was, in a sense, kind of glossing over misery, almost like Shakespeare or something like that. And I really appreciate that sort of thing. So bands like that. And then, of course, my favorite band of all time is The Cure.
Ah, yes.
And just Robert Smith is the first time I ever really heard a metaphor. There were teachers in front of me trying to teach me what it was my entire life, and I didn't understand it until I heard things like Chain of Flowers and all these really cool things, the songs about girls that Robert Smith would write about. And I just thought, holy shit, like it's so sick that this guy looks absolutely insane and has a voice like that. And then just like the first time I ever heard like the guitar tone of The Cure, it was the first time I ever heard a hollow body guitar and just like what that could do with pedals. And I just thought it was so ethereal and dreamlike. And I was like, this is really, really beautiful. And then, of course, later I got into some heavier stuff. I got into like hardcore and punk rock and stuff like that. So I really liked the more aggression side later on. I liked the idea that you could be aggressive without being like a corny about it. Like as cool as early heavy metal was, at the same time it was corny. You know, it was a show, it was an act, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But then, you know, so that's why I reference those 3 bands as far as being a lyricist and just what it means to be a frontman, because I just thought that they are really, I don't know, they all weave together somehow in my head, but I really do like the idea of what they could do with words, even when they were just like not trying to be the greatest singers or even calling themselves poets or anything like that. It's like they're not like Morrissey or anything, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Thankfully, yes. But no, I mean, Thursday, huge band for me when I was younger. Like you say, with that kind of like they had a weird kind of like emotional aggression.
Right. Exactly.
Like obviously anger is an emotion, but it had that. I don't know. It just it like you say, not trying to be like, you know, the perfect singer on it, but it felt like full of emotion. Like the voice was just like, I mean, screaming.
It's like on the edge of your seat. It's like moshing in your seat. It's crazy.
Yeah, the only thing I like kind of like on the more aggressive scale would have been Glassjaw. They're another band.
Oh yeah,
of
course.
That, all you need to know about the first album, Silence, and just the sort of pure aggression on that. And it was like he wasn't like trying to be the best lyricist in the world with the sort of like words he was using, or even the structure. But it was so relatable because it was just like how I would probably feel in that situation. You know, being incredibly angry or confused or whatever in that thing. Joy Division, being from this country, you kind of like, you know all about them. So it's kind of, you know, that and The Cure. The Cure are one of my favourite bands of all time. And
oh man, that's so great.
He's a fantastic frontman.
Just unreal. I saw the Curiosa tour when it came here years ago. I believe it was like maybe 2006, and it was basically The Cure, and it was like this outdoor stadium, but they got to choose every band that played on that tour. Oh, wow. So some of the bands, you remember that band Muse? They're like massive now. Yeah. So it was like their third, maybe fourth show, and they played on this tiny, beginner stage outside, and it was incredible. They had Thursday, they had Off Day Mar, and they had a band called Mogwai playing. Oh, Mogwai. And it was just, dude, it was I was like, I think maybe 14, 13, and I obviously went for The Cure, and I knew a couple of Mogwai songs, as much as you can know, and now they're one of the greatest bands, you know, to me. But it was just so surreal because I was like, holy shit, Thursday, The Cure, like all these crazy, it's such a rad thing. So maybe that's why it sticks out to me, The Cure and Thursday, and obviously Muse and all that stuff. But
that's a hell of a lineup.
I'm rambling.
No, that's good. I mean, that's a hell of a lineup, to be fair. I mean, that sort of lineup you wouldn't get here because they'd all be on their own bills. Like,
that's valid.
Muse, obviously now they're huge. I remember when they were doing, sort of like the sort of small circuit and everything back in the day, but Mogwai, absolutely mind-blowing, like live and even on CD. But I was just like, when I saw them like perform, I was just mesmerized. I didn't even move for the hour and a bit they were playing, because it was just that kind of just like sound projection.
Exactly. I think it was the first time that I ever heard a band. See, I went back and saw them when I was a functioning adult, functioning quote unquote, but you know, so I saw them in a club, and I had that same experience where I sat for an hour and a half and watched them play, and I was just like mesmerized. It was probably the first band I ever heard, minus like the Strokes, who to me it sounded like the record. It felt like somebody put a record on and attached it to the speakers. But with Mogwai particularly, it was just like, it was one of those moments where I was like, fuck, music is really awesome. It's
just that pure atmosphere,
right?
It's just like you say, you can get some bands that just go through, they can play the album, they can play it to the key, and that's it. But with Mogwai, because you've got that kind of like post-rock kind of atmospheric kind of whatever you want to class it as, and I totally love bands like that as well. I mean, having like a few of them like on my show recently have been quite good. You know, just having chats with these sort of post-rock kind of like, you know, and they all sort of cite Mogwai as their kind of like main, like,
that's so cool
and stuff. So it's really cool. It's really cool. I've got one more question left for you, man.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. But what are your hobbies away from music?
So I'm a massive dork. I love reading a lot. I love classic American literature, just classic literature in general.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of poetry and a bigger fan of short stories. And so when I'm not reading, I'm writing. That's like my long-term goal. I want to publish a book of short stories. I've already published books of my poems, but you know, they're just poems written by another guy in a band, so I don't even know if they're good at all, and I may never know. But ultimately, I want to publish short stories. That's what I want to do with my life. So I like reading, writing, and I've recently, in the past couple of months, 4 months, got really into running.
Okay.
It turns out, if you hate yourself just a little bit or a lot, you can run really far. So like I'm doing well in that atmosphere.
Oh, excellent. I mean, if you hate yourself enough, you can run further away from yourself.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. That's
cool.
Funny.
Well, man, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate your time, Ollie. Good luck with the album and everything. I hope it does really well for you guys.
I really appreciate that, man. Thank you for your time as well, and for taking the time to chat with me, and for even consider giving feedback about the record. I thank you for that, honestly. Thanks, man.
No worries, man. You have a fantastic rest of your day, and good luck with everything.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.